Hi, I'm Jenna Flanagan of Metro Focus. The lifestyle changes brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic has shifted many people's focus towards their loved ones and family. But what if you were on your journey to create a family and found that suddenly put on hold? Infertility or fertility struggles affects about 10% of the population. But for those struggling to create the family of their dreams, it can be a source of severe anxiety and depression, especially for women. So, joining me now to talk about managing stress, disappointment, and the overall uncertainty of the COVID-19 pandemic is Tsao-Lin Moy, an Eastern medicine fertility specialist who helps women navigate what is often a complicated web of therapies and emotions. Welcome to the program, Tsao-Lin.
Thank you very much.
So first, I just want to start off with getting an overall understanding. You're an acupuncturist and a Chinese medicine expert, and that's not necessarily the first step I think people would think of when they're thinking of fertility treatment. So can you walk us through a little bit of what it is that you help women do?
Absolutely. Most of the women that come to see me, usually they have tried on their own, then they may have gone to a fertility clinic and started a lot of hormone therapy. They might have done some IUIs, which is the intrauterine injection, like it's a timed um, insemination.
Hmm.
And that most oftentimes that's not working, and then the next step is that they're told that they need to do IVF, and at that point they are extremely stressed, and they've been on hormones. Oftentimes there are a lot of underlying conditions that were not addressed prior to, such as being on birth control for many years, so their cycle may be off. And also they may have underlying conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome, and so that creates a lot of other challenges when trying to get pregnant. So when they come to me, there's a big portion where we're addressing their overall health, their sleep, the stress, digestion. All of those things are a really big factor into fertility, right? Fertility is an indication of your overall health, right? So if you're having struggles getting pregnant, that's a symptom of the whole health of the person. And so focusing on that and really helping women to regulate their cycle, to get connected to their body. Oftentimes they're unaware of what's going on. They may have handed it over to a doctor to tell them. So there's a lot of stress and anxiety about their cycle and their health. And using acupuncture and herbal medicine, which are more natural ways to help someone to heal and balance their health so that they are much more fertile.
And so one of the things that, because again, you hear people talking about how, oh, and early 2021, there's going to be this huge coronavirus baby boom and et cetera. But can you also, after walking us through what some of the different therapies are, why is that virtually impossible for someone who's struggling with fertility?
Um, well, I wouldn't want to say it's impossible, but I think it kind of ignores the comparison is that, something like a snowstorm where everybody's hunkered down and they just, okay, this is a time to get close, you have more time with your spouse. For in this case, that there's a lot of anxiety around what is happening globally. And so there are a lot more issues. And so that is also triggering another level of stress. And part of this, because of this pandemic that's happening, a lot of the procedures that women might have been going for to kind of help, such as a hysterosalpingogram, which is something where they check to if the fallopian tubes are open, and in many cases that also is a way to make it easier to get pregnant. And then also hormone treatments or retrievals or even transfers that are happening. So that means if they were on that part of the journey, that when this quarantine is over, there's going to be, a waiting period for those clinics to get up to speed, and then really have to see like where women are hormonally. There's a lot that we don't know about the effects of the virus that might affect fertility. I wouldn't, be afraid of it. It's just that I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot more caution moving forward with fertility clinics.
So and particularly we're talking about women right now,
Yes.
if they are struggling with fertility, and of course the clinics are closed right now, you might not be able to have access to some of the therapies or treatments you were getting before. What would be your advice to someone who has suddenly seen their hopes of a family sort of stop? I mean, again, we all have had our lives put on stop, but this is like somebody's dream of a family that we're all supposed to be, learning to live with, that has been put on hold, and it's not clear for how long.
Right. Okay, Jenna, that is a great question. And what I say is that for the women that were, going forward with infertility treatments through fertility clinics with reproductive endocrinologists, that right now that particular path is paused. However, they can continue to work on their overall health and improve their fertility. And my suggestion, because the stress of infertility is really high. And I know at one point we talked about it's not listed as one of the top 10 things. I think there are going to be two more that are going to be in the top 10. One is the fertility, and then the other is when you experience a pandemic, that is kind of raised the bar of stress for people. What women can do is really focus on their health, focus on making sure that they're hydrating, that they can do some exercise. Like all of those things are going to contribute to having a much healthier body that is going to support fertility. So even though they may not be going into an office, that they can do a lot to improve, and also work on the biggest barrier, not the only one, is stress. The stress hormones and cortisol are the biggest reproductive or the endocrine disruptors. And women are very sensitive, they're much more sensitive to it. It immediately will affect their menstrual cycle. And so this is something to work on while we're in this pause.
So first off, I'm speaking with Tsao-Lin Moy, an Eastern medicine fertility specialist who helps women dealing with fertility struggles and infertility. And one of the other questions is for people who love someone who's struggling with fertility, and they're seeing that they're trying to process the fact that their dreams of a family have been put on hold and time is passing by. What are some of the better things that people who love that person can do? And more importantly, what should maybe people try not to say?
Okay, so I'm going to address the what should they not try to say. So one of the, I would say, worst things to tell a woman that is undergoing fertility is to tell her to just relax. Because that really dismisses her experience that she's undergoing, and it kind of blames her for what she's struggling with. I would, for somebody who they are struggling with fertility and someone else knows it, it's very painful to kind of bring it up. To say oh, I know you're struggling. How can I help you with this one thing? It's really important to look at the whole person, right? It's not just about her reproduction. It's really about all of her. So if somebody has anxiety because of which when they think about their having difficulty conceiving, they're having anxiety. And whatever you can do to help somebody to just like talk to them about something else, in fact, other than that, talk to them about, the sunshine, or you're going to go out for a walk. I mean,
But even that in of itself can be a challenge, because sometimes when people are so focused on this one thing, that's literally all they want to talk about.
If they want to talk about it, I think what's really important is to just listen and not like offer advice, or to ask like, well, how can I help you? Is there something that I can do to help you, that'll help you feel better? And, just, I'd be just very cautious about like offering advice, because usually it's not, it kind of, even if the advice is true or quote unquote helpful to that person, if they didn't ask specifically for it, or you could share something that that. But I think you have to ask permission if it's okay. Is it okay if I offer you some insight or something?
Well, we're coming up on the end of our time, but I also wanted to ask, because right now with so many people sheltering at home, a lot of us are spending a lot of time on the internet. And sometimes that can be helpful, but sometimes that might not be the best idea when you're seeking advice or even comfort sometimes.
Absolutely. So in my practice, one of the things, as I tell women, is get out of those chat rooms, because a lot of them just perpetuate fear and all of the problems and the failures and the struggles. And while it's comforting in one way to know that you're not alone, there is an aspect of where when someone shares that they have a very serious problem or other things, that you don't take that on yourself and say, oh, that could be me, and then continue to worry about a lot of other things that may not be relevant for you.
All right, well, listen, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I've been speaking with Tsao-Lin Moy, an Eastern medicine fertility specialist practicing in New York, but also with acupuncture as a means of helping women manage stress and anxiety as they go on their journey towards fertility and hopefully a family. So thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.